Hi, ladies. We're here.
We are.
Officially episode 1.
Happy Sunday.
Yes, 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 yes.
So we've just watched season 1, episode 1, The Good Son. And Frasier has just moved back to Seattle and he finds himself having to live with his father.
Yeah.
What a change.
What a change for Frasier. Oh, as somebody who is recently divorced, though, I could identify with some of what Frasier was talking about, like, because we could talk about it later, but like, he was kind of saying, like, he's getting used to all these adjustments and like he's getting used to being, I think it was like 6 months he had moved out to Seattle. So he was in Boston 6 months ago. And it's like, I get it. Like when you're going through these big mega transitions, I think you feel just like disoriented and frustrated. So I could definitely identify with a lot of what Frasier was going through in that episode.
Yeah, it's so interesting because if you think about what his job is, I mean, he's there to help support people while they're going through life changes and things that they're having difficulty navigate, but he's also doing that himself. So it's extremely meta. And I think that's one of the magical things about this show is you've got the character who's supposed to be the one who kind of knows everything to help others, and he doesn't have it figured out either.
Yeah. Well, what was great is that the episode, though, had the title cards. And this was the first time that you like see how the structure of the show is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And when you listen to listeners who or people who've never seen Frasier and don't understand the title cards, sometimes they have feelings. They're in their feelings about it. But I feel like it's a nice little, transition. Like you can kind of, take it all in because you're learning about him and so the title cards, I found them to be very helpful and kind of setting the stage.
Yeah, not only are they great transitions from scene to scene, but I think, as you mentioned last time, as the series go on, those title cards are some great inside jokes.
Yeah.
So you start to pay attention to them, you realize you're being let in on the gags sometimes, and I think that's really fun.
Love that. I do.
So we basically open on Frasier doing his radio show and he's giving Russell some advice. He's talking about his own life basically here, how 6 months ago he was living in Boston and then he's moved back to Seattle. And he's trying to urge Russell to do something if it's a mistake, but it turns out that he was cut off. They went to the news. But the rest of the show was pretty good, right? Roz disagrees. And basically fobs him off with telling him that his brother called. So then we meet Niles. And Niles opens with this fantastic story. I love this story about Yoshi the gardener, where he's talking about how Yoshi wants to put a Zen garden in. I love that joke.
Oh, yeah. It's so good. It's so Niles, and we get him in his true form right away.
Well, I want to just unpack before we move on for this. Like the first scene, I'm looking at it and I'm like, okay, here's Frasier. Classic yuppie. He's giving 1990s yuppie with the very conservative. And then I was like, okay, he's got the sweater vest. But then as the show goes on, everybody had a sweater vest on. I was like, what is going on? Frasier had a sweater vest. Marty had a sweater vest. Roz had was that going on in the 90s and I just missed that? I guess vests were I guess that was like
the LL Bean catalog had a strong hold on yuppies in the 90s.
Yes. I'm like, Frasier, you are giving yuppie, like moneyed. I love it. But you got to get rid of those vests. Everybody
say no to sweater vest.
Take it off, please.
Especially with that hair.
Vest. No, thank you. Right?
Oh, that hair.
Okay, I was waiting. Y'all brought it up. I wasn't going to be the first. So I had to sit down and say, I said, Simone, what is it about this hair that really, really bothers you? And here's what it is. It's like a mullet, but also like a bouffant. Like it's like a 1960s like housewife like flip in the back. So I went on Reddit and I'm like, okay, my Frasier folks on Reddit, they're gonna know. And one person, I can't give him credit because he deleted his account. but he called it a skullet.
It's the right term. It is absolutely the right term for that because think about it. The receding hairline on top, you can
Yes.
basically see
Yeah.
the shape of that man's skull. But then yeah, it's party in the back.
But then it's like, but I would just add the Simone edit of like, it's a skullet a la a bouffon. Like it's got like
Yeah.
the hair in the back, and I just cannot stand it. And then I always, when Frasier puts on like the headphones, I always think he's like gonna put on like a headband. You remember how you say like and he
Very
put
nice.
it on. So okay, that's it. That's my soapbox issue. Like I'm done. But it's a
Your
skullet.
skullet soapbox.
I think that was why I didn't like it. I was like, he looks so suburban with that hair. Where
Mhm.
is my like cigar volant Frasier? But it makes sense because he's like, I just came from Boston 6 months
Yeah.
ago. So he's kind of got like the Boston Cheers look. He kind of has that. So it's not like his more glamour, charming look quite yet.
Mm.
So I'll give it
Yeah,
that.
that's a really good reference. I mean, like if you think about it, when he was in Boston, he had this like think about when we're introduced to the character of Frasier in Cheers. He's an intellectual, he's pretentious, he's very professorial. And so that whole aesthetic, both the hair and the sweater vest, really suits his vibe in
Right,
Cheers.
right.
And I think this is an important part of his evolution in the context of
Yeah.
Frasier because he's becoming Frasier outside of Cheers.
Yeah, and it's so good you mentioned that because I found a clip of the tour that Kelsey gave the week of. Like, let's just take a minute and kind of unpack pop culture. So we're talking 1993, Whitney Houston, "I Will Always Love You," R.I.P. Whitney. That was number one song, as well as "I'd Give Anything for Love" by Meatloaf. That was not playing in my household, but the Whitney Houston was definitely playing. But so when Frasier before Frasier, X-Files was released like the week before. So you have the handsome David Duchovny, and then you
Fox Mulder.
Kelsey Buffon, and it's like I would have loved to see how that went because I'm sure some people were like,
Yeah.
I don't want the highbrow. I kind of want like the alien show, you know.
Different
So
vibes. But
it
you know what? I
totally was.
wonder what the Venn diagram looks like between like X-Files fans and Frasier fans.
Right. So, but in that tour, Kelsey said a couple things I thought were pretty poignant. So I just wanted to point it out. I'm sure our listeners, some of them probably know this, but this was new to me. Like I did not know that Frasier, the show, was filmed on the same set as Cheers. Did you guys know that?
No. Well, they did a really good job making that different.
Yeah, I didn't know. I didn't know that. I was like, wow, that's really interesting. And then the other thing that I found interesting is, and it goes back to what we're talking about, is that Kelsey said that his requisite for playing Frasier would be a new manifestation of Frasier the character.
Mm-hmm.
So
Good
definitely,
for him.
yeah. And I think like that really did translate. Like he kind of kept that, and he's like every season is Frasier's evolution.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
yeah,
this is so perfect too, given what Frasier does for a living. I mean, the entire field of psychology or psychiatry is about personal growth, and that's the journey Frasier's on. It's so I love that
yes,
we get to experience these evolutions in that kind of growth driven way.
yes. And
Love
Kelsey
it.
described Frasier's way of evolving as poised intolerance. Is poised and tolerance for change, but also trying to roll with the punches. And I think that is 100%. So, and the other thing that I learned watching that tour, and I definitely put the link in the show notes for our listeners if they want to kind of take a step in time. The food at Cafe Universal was real. That was real food.
Ooh,
So the
that's rare.
yeah, so the muffins and all that. So it must have smelled delicious on that set. Like I would have
Yeah.
loved to go to work.
I wonder if the coffee was real.
That I
Yeah,
wonder.
must
Okay,
have
maybe.
been.
Yeah, that we'll have to kind of
Right?
figure that one out.
That's fantastic. I like that immersive.
Yeah, it's really great when you can like really lose
Yes.
yourself in the set. Like I think well, we haven't gotten there in the story yet, but Cafe Nervosa it's just such a cozy cafe. like the way it's set up and everything. And I love how they
I would go
used the
there.
set. Like Friends had Central Perk, but they always had the same spot. Like they always sat on that same couch in the middle of that, and that's iconic. But they used every part of Cafe Noverse's set.
That's true.
Even at times kind of playing in and out. Remember, like, I think there was a scene I was kind of going in and out, and Frasier's going in and out, and like the caviar.
With the car, yeah.
Yeah, so you're right. And I think that that's a really cool thing. And one thing I love, and then I think this is explains why we like nostalgia sometimes, is because, and then, all the scenes, there was nobody on their phone in the background. That is such
I know.
refreshing. That's so refreshing. And it's so nice. And I wrote that down as a note. Like I love that there was no phone. You didn't see somebody's hands or their, you just didn't see it in the background. And that's really nice because you could really like absorb the scene, take in the scene. And it was really nice. I like that. The space is definitely well utilized.
Kind of on that same line, thinking about how Cafe Nervosa has no one on their phones because it was the 90s. Frasier's own job as a radio host is very 90s. He'd have a podcast now, but I love that he's live on air on the radio. It's such a thing that, I mean, people actually genuinely listen to the radio during those years, and that's awesome. And it's, what it's funny is that, and maybe it's because all of us lived through the time when Frasier was airing, but it doesn't feel weird or off.
Yes. And another way that seals that is that the whole season, I think, when he was in the radio, there was a computer behind him and he never touched it.
Yeah.
Never touched it.
Why would he?
Like he just, and I think he just saw it as like a tool, like a calculator. And now it's like so much, it's so integral.
It's embedded in people's lives. Yeah. Yeah. No, this is really fascinating. I do like that as a lens for which we can kind of take in these episodes, is like, this is of another time, but it doesn't feel like it. It just feels like a distractions-free version of life.
Synopsis. So we're at the cafe. Niles, who's not wearing a sweater vest, he's wearing a very, very stylish suit.
Is it a suit?
I know. I said, thank you, Niles, for being consistent, on point from day one. Day one, he's like, I'm there.
They go to sit down.
He hit the ground running.
Yeah, they go to sit down. Out comes a handkerchief. He's cleaning off his chair meticulously.
And that's pre-COVID.
Yes. And then I love that. I love the language. Like they're both brothers and they're both raised in the same household, but they used language differently. And I don't know if you pick up on that, but Niles referred to the retirement homes, what we would call it here in the States, as convalescence home. Like he would.
I know he's just elevating everything.
And then I had to think, I'm like, a retirement home. Whereas that's what Kelsey, or that's what Frasier referred to it later when he asked for the pamphlets, and he goes, do you have another? And then he said retirement home. So already you can kind of see like they're brothers, but they're kind of a different,
You know what? This is a perfect dissection of their dynamic, because look at what they do. I mean, like, Niles later refers to Frasier's job as like the fast food version of psychiatry. He's always one level elevated.
And he's
and Frasier's more accessible.
And he's coming with his Niles roasts. Like, Niles is fierce with his roasts. He can roast his brother. So good.
Yeah. But yeah, that's a great observation, that even in episode 1, Niles is coming in with that elevated tone, the elevated language. And Frasier, he's on the radio. So he's, relative to his brother, he's more of a man of the people, but then relative to us, he's still elevated. So it's like a really cool breakdown.
Yes. Yes, I do like that. That was really good.
So as we were saying,
back to your synopsis.
Out that Martin, their father, had slipped over and spent Monday morning on the bathroom floor, so he can't live alone anymore. Niles pulls out the convalescent home brochures.
But haven't we all found ourselves on the floor at one point in our bathrooms? Like, you don't have being old is not the prerequisite for falling on and being on the bathroom floor.
Sometimes it's just wine.
We've all been there.
It's not fun.
Mm.
Yes,
At one point in your life, we're always naked on the floor.
that is true.
At one.
So Niles basically guilts Frasier into taking Martin in because apparently Martin can't live with Niles and Maris because they don't get along. Who does?
Right?
Yeah.
If only it was so easy, though. Like in real life, in your family, you couldn't just say, "Oh well, he doesn't get along with my wife. Sorry," because in real life, it's not that easy. But I guess
It's a back and forth.
If you're married to Maris, it is. I guess
maybe it is clear cut. Yeah. So good. So good. Maris is also one of those things, characters or concepts even.
Yes.
That it right from episode 1, you know exactly who she is.
Right. And kudos to Maris that she can take up space without even being present.
Yeah.
Like that should be an aspiration. I think that's like Beyonce level presence. Like you just say the word Beyonce and it just
You say Maris and then you just imagine like the coldest chill you've ever had.
She just takes up presence. And you meet whenever they say Maris, I always look and I'm like, where would she stand in this moment if she was here?
Now, does she stand or does she just kind of float like a specter? That's what I always assume.
Yeah. The thing about Maris is that they weren't originally just going to have her as an unseen character. They were planning on introducing her, but they got so invested and they had so much fun with the descriptions that it became impossible to cast her.
Yeah. Oh no, I think it's better that way.
Definitely.
And I love how you get this already like so complete picture of the family dynamic in just a few conversations and a few interactions in the first episode, no less.
So we move on to Frasier's apartment now. Such a great set.
If I could,
what I love about it is it's so stylish. It's, even today, like it's still up to today's standards. Like you could walk into that apartment. Yeah.
Oh, magnificent.
Timeless.
Yes.
That's the beauty of the eclectic style of decor.
And I just have to say, I found it so sexy that Frasier's at the piano and he's playing. And I was like, that is kind of like really attractive. Like you just see a man quietly. I know, right?
It's the skillet. You're missing the mark here. It's the skillet.
I know. I tried to look beyond that and just look at his hands. I was like, don't look at the sweater, guys. Don't look at the hair. Just look at the hands. But it was just like he was kind of like poetic and in his moment. And I was like, oh, that is so amazing. And then upon reflection of that actual scene, I think the writers were speaking to us and saying like, quiet before the storm. Like it was so peaceful. And then, you know, the camera kind of spanned from like right to left. And then it ends at the door.
Yes.
And it was like all hell broke loose.
Well, my favorite thing is right before Niles walks in with the bags, Frasier does this wistful look towards his apartment, which is empty for basically the last time. And he just looks like, oh, how are you taking this for me? And then Niles busts through the door. The timing is flawless.
It was so
the
good.
Expressive acting is just right.
Yes. And I feel like maybe like the set director probably said to whoever, like, before you bring that nasty chair in here, I need 5 full minutes of showing off this wonderful apartment. Because as Frasier said, it is eclectic style. He has the sofa from Coco Chanel's Atelier. Like he's on point. And throughout his whole
got the Eames chair.
Yeah, like and throughout that whole scene, he's like trying to get people to acknowledge his apartment.
Yeah, well, think about it. Like, you know, if Frasier, like, I mean, obviously it's the pilot. We've just met him, but we know who he is from Cheers. We know he's got kind of that pretentious air about him. And I think it's very important to Frasier that the physical items that surround him in his life reflect the person of taste that he sees himself as. So he's got those art pieces, those pieces of furniture, the view he has, like all of that is super deliberate. And like, you know, he's lucky that he has the means to afford it, but like it's very curated.
Yes. But one thing I'm not sure about is some of his African art. He's got some of those are ugly pieces. Like mask it back.
I think, you know what, though? I think that's the kind of, it's very of the time from the early 90s to show that he's looking beyond just European classics. He's a worldly person who has like, you know, diverse tastes. And I think that's probably the lens that someone who in Fraser's position would have taken about, you know, how he curates and collects his things.
And let's not forget at the end, like he's a guy, he's a man, and men always want to joke about penises wherever they can.
Especially Freudians like Frasier.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yep.
Like I think like that is. I'm like, maybe that's because I always got like a sexual. Like I'm like, is this him trying to talk about his virility or sexual prowess or lack of it? I don't know.
Yeah, he's either compensating or he's bragging. It's unclear.
We never really get that answer.
Well, I mean, we could piece together based on his romantic luck throughout the series which one it is, but
yeah. So Niles busts in, is carrying Dad's bags, and then we're introduced to Martin. Martin is rough. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I was gonna say, before you even get to Martin, the look on Niles' face, he has just pure joy because he is this. I mean, like, because we have so much we can say about Martin, but the way that Niles thinks he's pulled one over on his brother with this whole situation, he walks in, he's swinging the bags, like he looks like a kid. Can't miss that part.
So yes.
And then
absolutely.
The chair comes. Does the chair not come? It does make an appearance. Is it?
The chair shows up.
Yeah, but maybe later. I couldn't remember.
It comes later.
Okay, all right, okay.
Yeah. They just get Martin settled in, and we get a bit of a preview of Frasier's apartment without chair. You know, you've got to make up that 5 minutes, and then there's a knock. The doorbell rings, and there's the chair.
Yeah, and this is one of my favorite moments in the series because it's actually like it's the middle part of a 3-part joke.
Yes.
And the first part of the joke is set up when Martin is commenting on Frasier's decor and furniture, and he says, oh, you know, if you have all of these really excellent pieces and they match, it's called eclectic. And the second part is as soon as the chair comes in, Martin doesn't miss a beat. It's eclectic.
Yes.
And we'll talk as soon as we get to the later part of the episode when the final callback in that eclectic joke is, and it just absolutely hits a home run.
Definitely. I agree.
Yes, it's a great joke.
That chair looks comfy though.
Oh yeah.
Truly. I mean, like, say what you will. I mean, like, I'm sure Frasier's furniture, while it's beautiful, like it doesn't really give that kind of warmth to it. But that chair, I would sit in that.
Apparently, that's one of the things people who visited the set would do, was always sit in that chair. Apparently, that's the first thing they'd do.
Don't blame them.
Well, in that tour that Kelsey gave, like, I'm assuming it was like a promo interview for the show.
Yeah.
And he said that in the living room, he said that the TV was the center. But really, ironically, it ended up being that chair. And
absolutely.
And he said that what they were going for with having the TV be the center, or maybe the evolution is like having something the center of a room. He said that they got that influence from All in the Family. Now, I've never seen that show, but I definitely am familiar with like the Archie Bunker character. And I definitely see that kind of present through Marty's, his character.
Yeah. You know, I wonder, there's another way to interpret the TV being the center. Think of where the TV is placed on the set. It is basically exactly where our screen ends. Right?
Oh, I never noticed that.
The viewer's TV stops, their TV starts, and then you get the window into Frasier's apartment. So I wonder, like, maybe that's what he was alluding to with that centering piece of like, they're looking at us because they're looking at the TV that they're gathered
and
around.
And maybe that makes the show pleasurable because there's a little voyeur in all of us, right? But we can't that's not a socially acceptable behavior. It's associated with perversion, but we all do it, and it's fun, and it's like, wouldn't it be nice to see how the other half lives or how other people live when they're not around? So if that is truly what the writers did with the TV, like making it the center, and like, as you say, like being kind of like the extension between the TV. That's hot. I love it.
It's smart. It's
It's
really
so
smart.
hot. I love it.
I like to think it was an intentional choice, but I guess we'll have to talk to the writers to
Well,
find out.
when we get the writers on, we will be having questions.
Yes.
There you go.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's something I've noticed about Frasier is that they're not afraid to sort of seat people naturally or have a natural environment. Some shows you'll see everyone you'll see like 4 people crammed around one side of the table just so the camera can pan on them, but they're not afraid of having people's backs to the camera. And substituting just letting it feel natural just makes it feel like a more natural show and that these are real people.
It's more inviting.
It kind of closes the bubble. It closes the bubble into the viewing experience, probably.
Yeah, you sort of able
now,
to
Laura,
forget about the fourth wall.
Now, in this, when we're still in the apartment, now is this when Frasier says to Niles, like, I had plans this week. I was supposed to go to the opera.
It's right after. So he does that at Cafe Nervosa the next day.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Okay.
Yeah. So, and that's the segue when Niles makes his generous offer on behalf of him and Maris, which, Frasier obviously misinterprets initially.
Yeah. But before we get to that, Niles has one last jab to put at Frasier.
And it's a title card.
Yeah, Eddie.
Eddie.
I love
Eddie Spaghetti.
I think this is my favorite title card of the episode.
It's one word and it carries so much.
Yeah, and it's such a great shot.
It's just like it has its own presence.
And it's such a great shot. You get Martin and he's eating his food and he's watching his movie and you just slowly pan over to the couch where Eddie's just sitting there staring at Frasier.
He's doing exactly what Frasier was freaking out about, which is just looking at him in a creepy way. It's so good. Whoever trained the canine actor that played Eddie, I don't know how they did it because they just did so expressive.
Well, I found it ironic that he is uncomfortable with that because as a psychiatrist, isn't he just sitting and staring at people?
Right. Oh no, I think it's a beautiful use of like a reversal. Yeah, because he's okay being the one that just stares in silence, but when someone turns it around on him, especially a dog, which is like about as far as you can get from a doctor of psychiatry. I mean, like, the dog turning it around on him is just wonderful.
It is. And it's just I'm just trying to think. There weren't any shows, I think, at the time that had a dog as a main character as much as Eddie was. I think Full House had a dog. But it wasn't a character. Eddie was a character.
It's like an accessory. Eddie's fully a presence.
Let's take a step here because I was 7 years old when Frasier came out. So I was watching like Family Matters and the Olsen twins, and I vaguely remember there being a dog character there that kind of. So maybe dogs were big in the 90s.
Yeah,
like maybe.
Well, I think dogs make people feel real and approachable, but like I think there's a distinction between some of those like TGIF sitcoms where the dog was just a part of the family, and then. Eddie, who is full on a character
You're right.
Drives things forward. Because I think like maybe on Full House, what was it, a golden retriever? Like that dog ran away once or something. Like that's not the same as the presence that Eddie brought. So I think it really is just a unique trait from this particular sitcom.
Eddie really worked.
Even the dog has the skill. Like he had, like you said, Laura, like you had to have, a trainer.
Yeah. I believe Eddie, who's played by Moose, his trainer
for the first few seasons.
Yeah, I think up until about season 7, and then his son Enzo takes over.
Yeah, wasn't Enzo Moose's son?
Yes, Enzo's his son.
Yeah, there's an interplay between this pilot and the casting of Eddie.
Yes, father and son. But the trainer for both of those dogs was Matilda Gaffney.
Very cool. Extremely talented because I mean, obviously credit where it's due to the canine actor, but the being able to work with the dog in that way to get them to do those things on cue and have the right presence, not just the right positioning, but the right bearing.
Yeah.
Is just so cool.
Yeah, they're highly
And something
trained
tells
dogs.
me that Eddie had his own room on set, like his own little
Green room.
Dude, Eddie was
basically.
the richest dog in Hollywood.
Yeah, and it was probably like next to Kelsey's
Yeah.
dressing room. That's the word. Eddie probably had his own dressing room.
If he didn't, what a shame.
So yeah, now we're at the next day. And, well, it's not the next day, but it's been a week, I think, since Martin moved in.
Mm-hmm. That's right, because Frasier's missed out on several social engagements.
And
Yes.
it's the ultimate bachelor. Like I wrote it down because I said, would I do any of this if I were, you know, having the time to do it? And it says here that he went to the theater on Tuesday. He went to the symphony on Wednesday. And then Friday he went to the opera. That is a lot of theater
Yeah.
time.
That's a big social calendar, even for someone with his disposable income.
Exactly.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
really
But
he's really throwing himself into that life. He's just going out.
yes, and it is a different Frasier than the Frasier who was in Boston. He's not going to the same bar every day. He's diversifying his social life.
Yeah.
He's I mean, presumably if he has multiple tickets to each of these things and he's given them to Niles or whoever, he's intending to take someone. So he's really flinging himself out there post-divorce.
Yeah.
And you know, as a divorcee, I can say that is one of the advice that they tell you is like they say fill up your date book. Just go out there. So I guess
get out there.
Kind of practicing what he preaches here. So for authenticity, Kelsey or Frasier, I'm very
right.
That was good. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's really throwing himself out there. And I don't know if he's very successful yet.
Well, no, he skipped everything.
Yes.
He gave the tickets away to Niles.
Then we get this great joke when Frasier's asking if he still had the brochures for the rest home, and Niles is like, "Of course I do. Maris is 5 years older than me."
That was it's just one more little detail. I was going to say it's more color on Maris's character, but we know Maris is deeply pale, so
yes. So this is where Niles reveals that him and Maris are happy to help pay for a home healthcare worker. Now, I think this is the only time it's mentioned that Niles is paying part of Daphne's wage.
Yeah, which is so interesting as far as their future dynamic goes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's not just the boss's brother. He's essentially
kind of the boss too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he's the financial boss.
And it makes that one episode where the butler kind of is reminding Daphne of the ethics of dating your employer. Like, now I'm going to look at that a little bit different because I never realized that Niles paid part of it. And like the like my legal mind is saying like, you're the employer.
That's the ethical gray area.
Yeah, that's your employee. So you've been sexually harassing her. You know, Niles.
But it's Niles, so it's okay.
Well, it's Niles, so he doesn't even like. It's interesting too because I think there's two ways to look at it. One, this is the early '90s. I think society was still kind of coming to terms with what those kinds of dual relationships mean. And so like maybe a few years later that would have been super cut and dry sexual harassment, but here it's a gag for comedy. But it also kind of shows a little bit of obliviousness on the part of both Niles and Daphne's character that this is not raised.
Yeah. And but it's only mentioned here, and then it's implied later in the season that it seems like Frasier's the only one paying for it. And it's interesting because Niles doesn't even meet Daphne in this episode. He doesn't meet her until episode 3.
That's true.
True.
I like that because that distance allows for us to get to know the character separate from their dynamic.
Yeah.
And maybe the terms of that employment relationship and the payment, we can maybe safely assume, hopefully maybe it changed so that we don't get that ick of like, Niles, you're hitting on someone you're also paying for their salary, which would apply today.
Yeah.
But, I'm gonna look back at that.
Yeah. But that, I mean, jumping back to like the macro of this, I mean, like obviously like it's kind of an icky situation where you think about how this impacts his dynamic with Daphne, but it does actually serve to cement Niles as a cast member who
Mm-hmm.
has purpose, because if he, not only is he Frasier's brother, but he's there contributing to the situation where he's supporting their father's, health and things like that.
Yeah.
So I think it brings him closer into
Yeah.
that inner circle of main cast members. And so I think that's why the writers did it, more so than to set us up for some future ick.
Yeah.
But again, that's like a byproduct of nostalgic TV. Like, I think like that is
Mhm.
a type of viewing, is nostalgic
Yeah.
TV. And I wonder, like, maybe that's something, psychologists and psychiatrists can look at, is like, how do you kind of reconcile like shows you watch, you have like this nostalgic thing, but then you live life
Oh
and you look
yeah.
back and you're like, oh, we shouldn't have been okay with that.
Yeah.
That's true though. There's a lot of stuff that we as consumers of media, like, will make some excuses to smooth things over so that our memories stay positive. And I think we do that in real life too. It's not just with the television or other media that we consume. I think, if you think back to your childhood memories, I mean, like, how often are you really dwelling on the time that you like broke your arm or skinned your knee on a bike? You're thinking about playing outside.
Yeah.
And so, like, I think there's a really natural instinct that humans have to sanitize their memories of the past if they weren't abjectly traumatic, because it makes us feel better. So yeah, I can see how all of us would do that with regards to our viewing of this show, because yeah, I mean, we enjoy the show, it makes us feel good. And so yeah, some of the parts that feel a little less comfortable, I mean, of course our brain wants to do its gymnastics to make it stay comfortable.
And you know what Frasier would say? He goes, and that is why I'm in radio. Like, I think like that's how he would kind of button that up so he can go back
He
to
sure would.
being, it's about me and my feelings.
Yeah. And I think it's totally doable that you can recognize something for its flaws but still appreciate it as a whole.
Definitely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, I love this discussion. We're deconstructing some really interesting things here. All right. So I think this is a great segue to the introduction of our home healthcare worker.
Ooh.
It is. So Frasier's just finished an interview with another woman who doesn't meet Martin's very high standards. He thinks she was casing the joint.
Which is so great, because it reminds you that Martin's an ex-cop.
Yeah, you could take you could take him, the guy out of the cop, but not the cop out of the guy. Like, he's just always suspicious. He's always like got that detective. Yeah.
Yes. So the doorbell rings, and this is the last one. So, Martin, keep an open mind. And the door opens to Daphne, who's got her hand in the biscuit tin.
I love that wording.
I love it too. And it's just so fun. And what she's doing is something every woman's had to do before, is adjust the bra.
Or take it off.
It's a skill taking it off without taking your shirt off.
True. Definitely double skill if you can do it, while you're waiting for a job interview.
With that huge bag she had. My Lord.
I know.
I love that
the Mary
bag.
Poppins bag.
She has that for seasons.
Bananas to come out, an umbrella.
There's a broom. I mean, like, there's.
I was like, what is wrong with you? Get it together, Daphne.
I think it's part of her charm, though.
Apparently, that was an idea by the director James Burrows. He said they just threw in a bunch of random stuff off the set just before they shot the scene for her to pull out, because they thought it'd be funny.
I love it. And she rolled with it.
Yeah.
That's the wonderful thing, is that, the actress that plays Daphne, you can't tell for a moment that she's not just completely unfazed.
Yeah. But yes.
So Daphne walks in.
Yes, so she walks in. She's introduced to Martin and to Eddie Spaghetti.
That's right, Eddie Spaghetti.
He likes pasta. No, he's got worms.
No.
And that joke is basically the actual opposite of any jokes that Frasier and Niles have between themselves. Like they've got the highbrow, like,
right.
intellectual humor that's really subtle and like people won't get. And then you've got Marty and Daphne with just the lowest humor.
And they complement each other.
They do. It's a great balance.
They do.
It's eclectic.
And then Daphne spots a chair. I think this is third part to the eclectic joke. And she's like,
Yes.
what a coffee chair.
Absolute home run. Absolute home run when she says, oh, look at that. Start with a good piece and replace the rest as you can afford it.
And Miss
Okay.
Daphne Moon from Manchester, I looked at her and I loved her outfit. I was like, I'm feeling this. It's reading The Craft. It's like, I love it with the little choker. And
so 90s.
Yeah, and then when she opened her mouth to speak, you want to be offended, but she's so lovable that you're like, and I said, this is, if Adele did not ever become Adele, that's she would be Daphne Moon. Like I was like, she just gives Adele to me because like Adele is like this elegant thing, but then she's performing, but then sometimes she's like, all right, babes, bye. And that's just like how Daphne is. She can be like very smart, and then but she's also British, so she's inherently blasé.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's good. Her whole aesthetic is a perfect counterpart to Frasier with the sweater vests and the whatever he did to his hair. Yeah. Because they're both 90s in their own way.
Definitely.
She's fashion forward 90s and he's pretentious yuppie 90s.
Yes.
Yeah.
He shaved his beard. He had a beard in the last season of Cheers, but they shaved it for Frasier.
Oh, thank God. If he showed up with that beard, it would have been over. I would have.
No. The beard and the skullet, like, what is that look?
No.
The full skullet. So they start the interview. Daphne says she's from Manchester, England. Apparently her accent is not Mancunian, but I don't know accents well enough. It's British, so that's good enough for me.
Yeah.
Little switcheroo on the American audiences because we don't know.
Yes.
Fools, we wouldn't know.
And this is when she correctly deduces that Martin's a police officer because she's psychic.
Oh yeah, Daphne the psychic, so good. Those moments, especially because like every time she says that she's a bit psychic, you can't tell if she's being serious or joking. The exact like tone that she uses just treads that line, and she's either making fun of you to your face or she just truly believes it.
I think she truly believes it.
That storyline of her being psychic, I feel like it's such a one of the many dividing points in the Frasier community, because I think there's some viewers who, I'm one of them, where I'm like, oh girl, get out of here with this. But then again, we all have a friend that has like no offense to people if you have these, but like the healing crystals, and they're all about the astrology, and they're like, oh, I got a parking ticket, but I'm in full moon, so it's radar or whatever. It's like,
right.
There's always somebody who's like that. So I guess I'll let it slide, but I do not like the psychic bit of this. Oh, I can't stand it.
I like it as a contrast because it's got the same like prefix as psychiatry.
Really?
So psychic and psychiatry, like they both start with the same word root, but they're wildly different. And that's what I think is great. I think it's a perfect balance of like, you have Frasier and Niles who are these overeducated, like very deep in the science of it, and then you've got Daphne who just pulls stuff out of her bag, and I love it.
Yeah.
I do like where they do go with the psychic storyline and how years down the track they resolve that, but down in season 8, and I think
that's true.
Yeah, I really like that progression, but honestly. The show seems to imply that Daphne might actually be legitimately psychic.
Well, at least in the beginning, I think.
Yeah.
It's really hard. Yeah. It was a quirky aspect of her personality. I think it works, but I can get people who don't think that.
I like it because it rounds out her personality, and it also, if you have, like, if you're going to divide the cast into like kind of two segments, if you've got like the Frasiers and Niles versus like the Roz, Marty, Daphne's, it differentiates her from Roz because they're both very grounded and kind of you know, real and less pretentious, but they have very different ways of going about that. And I think as we get into future episodes, we'll be able to dissect those differences a little bit more.
Definitely.
But that's why I kind of like that they made her a little bit of a space cadet, because Roz is just so no nonsense about stuff.
Yes,
And it's a great contrast.
it is. And Frasier, even, he doesn't look at it as a negative. He calls her quirky, which I think is, polite but accurate.
It's pretty respectful.
And respectful, and still there's like, but I'm willing to go with it as well. Rolling with the punches, which is exactly what they said he was going to be like in this, in this season.
Advice.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Martin likes Daphne. Even if Frasier thinks she's a bit of a kook. And so Martin hires her on the spot, but Frasier wants to have a bit of a chat about it, and before they agree. And then it's revealed that Daphne wants a live-in position, which is a bit more of a problem for Frasier. And I don't blame him. He's just gone from living by himself to potentially living with his father and a complete stranger. I don't like roommates at the best of times.
Right.
I need my space.
And I think Frasier would be somebody. Do you think he would do a background check? I don't know. I think he.
I don't know. It's the 90s. Did people do that?
Exactly. So
they hire a detective.
Really
a PI.
Have like a stranger in your house, like you don't know who they're associated with, and it's very risky.
It is. So then Martin and Frasier have a huge argument.
That scene. Oh, I almost cried. The longing to want to connect was so beautiful in that scene. Like you just saw these two talented actors really having a moment, and they really, you really could understand their father and son relationship, and how it's so battered, but there's a desire to want to heal, and I love that scene.
Yeah, it's something I love about the show is that they are so good with the comedy, but they are also so on point with the really dramatic scenes. Like you'll be laughing 1 minute and then you'll just be really somber and close to tears just because of the really beautiful scene, and then you're laughing again.
And it sets us up for the comedic relief at the end. So you kind of go on an emotional where you're kind of like, you're in your feelings, but then you laugh and kind of like, oh, that's, because there's a call to that back in when Frasier's back at work the next day.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the argument touches on things like how much Martin's life has changed as well, because 1 minute he's able-bodied and now he's disabled, and that's a hard reality to come to as well.
Yeah, the show really just does an excellent job of taking real, serious emotions that people have to process and delivering them in that very real way. But then they balance it with the comedy because it is a sitcom.
But I'm hard pressed to find a show that seemed to balance it as well as Frasier. Like they weren't.
It's definitely one of a kind.
Yeah, they weren't afraid. They weren't afraid to have a whole minute where there was no laughter at all, just to get the emotional point across.
And what I loved about it too was that you were observing two men being vulnerable, which I think the world should see more of.
Yes.
Oh yeah. I think that men struggle with even being vulnerable. I think the toxicity that men, are faced with, like it's inescapable, and they don't even see that there's a way out. You can be a person who experiences the full range of emotions, vulnerability being one of them.
Yeah. Huh. Frasier is an antidote to toxic masculinity.
Definitely.
Yeah, and even Martin, who's shown as the more masculine sort of traditional man's man, he does get in touch with his emotions quite a bit, and it's really nice to see it given the space and the time.
Absolutely.
So Frasier ends the argument asking for one lousy thank you, which Martin doesn't do. He doesn't thank him.
I was so hurt by that. I felt bad for Frasier in that moment. I really did. Like, oh, how sad.
It was.
Mm-hmm.
That's Martin's masculine side holding out, wanting to be
That's
vulnerable.
harsh. That's harsh.
Then we cut to the next title card, which is Lupe Velez.
I'm so thrilled that this was included in the pilot of a show because this moment, like, I think other series writers might have saved it for a later episode, but it was just so well timed.
Yes.
It went there, and it was exactly what this episode needed.
And it came from a woman who you would think is not intelligent enough to know, the knowledge that she just dropped right there in that moment onto him.
Yeah, before Perry Gilpin was cast as Roz, they had Lisa Kudrow in the role, but she was fired after only a couple of days because I had a lot of the things she was about the character. She was a bit more quirky than she was no nonsense, and having to rewrite the character.
That's too much like Daphne.
Yeah, but the thing was, she just couldn't nail the Lupe Velez speech in the way that they needed her to.
Really? Oh, I guess you should not mention those words around Lisa Kudrow.
She did all right, though.
Yeah, I'm sure that the trajectory of her future ended up just fine.
You never really forget when you're fired, like that's a burn.
So Frasier laments to Roz that, things with his life aren't working out how he thought they were, and Roz goes into the Lupe Velez speech. Lupe Velez was a movie star in the 30s whose career didn't go so well, so she decided to take her own life in a beautiful, theatrical way, but that didn't work out because she ended up with her head in the toilet. But you won't forget the story of Lupe Velez. So her life, that's all she wanted, was to be remembered. So her life turned out for her in the end, even if it wasn't the way she expected it to. And it resonates with Frasier.
Isn't that the lesson in life, though? It's like you win $1 million because we all say, yeah, I wish I could have $1 million, but then you get it and like you're miserable, and like that's such as life. Like you intend life to go one way, and it's like, no, you're gonna have your head in the toilet.
Yeah.
Jesus.
So Frasier takes his next caller, who turns out to be Martin. This is Martin apologizing, basically. He's doing it over the phone in his roundabout way.
Well, he says, I said thank you, okay? Did you hear that?
It's so good. It's so good, because it's exactly what Frasier wanted, but it's not how he wanted it.
No. Exactly. How amazing is that? I love the way they did that. The way the writers did that. I loved it. It kind of was like a nice bookend to that uncomfortable scene. I liked it.
It was. It was a way to inject the humor back into it.
Absolutely.
And then we could get to our final caller. So Frasier talks to her, and she's having trouble getting over a breakup, and it's like she's in mourning. And Frasier's advice to her mirrors what he's just gone through himself. He was in mourning about the loss of what his life was going to be. And then he decides to tell her the Lupe Velez story. And when we get then we get the closing credits, which shows that they've hired Daphne. All of them are sitting on the couch.
With Eddie.
And Eddie's staring at Frasier.
Yeah, what a great setup for kind of the new normal for both this cast of characters, but also the viewers.
And I like that they ended with them all together, because it kind of makes you think like we're going to be together. Like this is it. Like we're ready. Let's launch. Like I think it was like a nice intro. I guess in
it was beautiful.
The podcasting world, that's what you would do. You would kind of have like your little intro episode to kind of set the tone for this journey you're taking your listeners on. So yeah.
Yeah. All in all, just a really, really excellent pilot. Probably one of the most memorable pilots that I've ever seen of a television series. Definitely of a sitcom.
Actually, won an Emmy.
Yeah, I don't blame them for it, because it's truly, it does everything you want a pilot to do. It introduces all the characters with a certain degree of authenticity. It sets up the stage for what the series is about, and it does this really great balance of tugging at your heartstrings and also making you laugh.
And nothing was competing. Like there weren't competing. There was drama, but it was like, it's going to be like a journey of a drama, but you don't have like competing personalities. Like, oh, I'm the goofy one and I'm the handsome one. Like, it's not so, pronounced. And I like that. There was no, it was just like, here it is. This
Yeah.
is what you asked for. This is what you're getting. Yeah.
Yeah, it's different to some pilots, because a lot of pilots, when they're written, they want to show all the dynamics straight up, because they're basically trying to show what the show will be. But this episode, or they only just showed the relationships in relation to how they interact with Frasier. So Niles didn't meet Roz or Daphne. Daphne didn't meet Roz or Niles. Martin didn't meet Roz. So we only met these characters in how they related to Frasier and how they interact with Frasier. And I think that makes the episode stronger overall, because you're able to sort of take each character by themselves, essentially, and how they related to Frasier.
And it's digestible. It's in digestible dosages. It's not like a relationship overload where you're like, oh wait, is that the brother? Or, sometimes some shows there's just too many people, too many relationships, and it's like constantly like, okay, I need a break.
Yeah. No, I think it's a smart choice to have them all have a dynamic with Frasier, because he's the character we know. He's the one we recognize from Cheers. And so he's our entry point into the show, and he's the title character. But then as the series goes on, obviously those other dynamics come out and they develop and they evolve in their own ways. And I think it's just really nice that the writers didn't try to jam too much in there.
Yes. That was really good.
Yeah.
What a good pilot.
It is.
Yes.
Such a good episode and such a great start to the series. I feel like pretty much all characters are recognizable as how they are, because you get some pilots and it's almost like you have to disregard what happens in that episode because it doesn't relate to the rest of the season. But everything is in character in this episode. It just flows on so nicely.
They truly hit the ground running, and it's almost like the cast had just a really strong conceptualization of how they wanted to play their characters before the camera started rolling. And it's super evident, because I think, when you're sort of feeling it out and you're effectively just being a person reading lines, it shows. And in this case, everyone brought their full, power behind it, and it was just really cool.
Yeah, most of the cast has a background in theatre, so it's almost the show itself has almost like a theatrical sort of feel to it. They do everything in only one or two takes.
I noticed the theatrical influences with the doors opening and closing. Like, because that's a very theater thing to do, is open doors and kind of lunge forward.
It's a lot of prop work, yeah. And it's just something about it that just makes it feel natural to watch. It almost doesn't feel like you're watching a TV show. It's like you're watching a stage play or just someone's life.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, do you think that the name of the episode, The Good Son, is that, I don't know, I don't really like it, but I mean, I guess it's appropriate, but I don't know if they could have did a better job of naming the first episode. What do you guys think?
I think it works.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he did, and it is mentioned in the actual episode, so that's always nice.
All right, so we've just spoken about season 1, episode 1, The Good Son, and I think that was such a fun conversation to have.
Yeah,
truly.
Next time we've got season 1, episode 2,
Space Quest.
Yes.
Honestly, I see that almost as an extension of the pilot episode, and I'm looking forward to talking about that next week or next time.
It's going to be great.
It is. Tune in. Until then, I'm Laura.
I'm Jennifer.
And I'm Simone.
And this is Tossed and Scrambled.
But I don't know what to do with those tossed salads and scrambled eggs. They're calling again. Good night, Seattle. We love you.